Hello, and welcome to Castle Talk, where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre worlds. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the new book, Quest for the Nautilus, Young Captain Nemo. This episode, we're talking to Incher Yo, author of the new book, Isonation. Incher is currently director of print production at Saga City Media in Seattle, Washington. Born and raised in Texas, where he graduated from the UT Austin with a degree in marketing, he recently made a move to cooler and greener climes out west with his wife and 2 children. Welcome, Incher.
Hey, thank you.
This is a really prescient book, and I know that the reasoning behind the world of Isonation is not what drives the entire story, but you recently wrote an article for medium.com where you were talking about what went into the background of the story. Tell me about the world of the book Isonation.
Well, I wrote Isonation probably 3 years ago. It's probably fair to say the pandemics weren't as much a part of the public conscience as they are now. I mean, pandemics were mostly relegated to movies of the week like Outbreak or Contagion. For me, Isonation is very much about how did mankind survive a viral apocalypse? Mm-hmm. What do they have to do to adapt, to fight the virus? What do they have to sacrifice? I mean, I wanted to explore the technology we have now and how that technology evolved based on extraordinary circumstances. I also wanted to ask, how far would people go to ensure the continuation of our species? I mean, we're all social distancing now, right?
Yeah.
Everything going on right now. I'm working from home. You're working from home.
I'm in my little blue office, and yeah, everybody I've been dealing with, I've been interviewing people. It's all exactly like this. Sometimes with video. Yeah.
So schools and events are canceled. Some people are sheltering in place. Here in Seattle, they just announced yesterday that people should stay at home, stay healthy. All of this isn't to defeat the coronavirus, but to just try to control how it spreads. So we're all flattening the curve, right?
Yeah.
Well, in Isonation, there is no curve. It's just like a straight line going up. So the fictional virus in my book is so virulent and deadly, it's wiping everyone out. So the events in my book take place generations after a massive pandemic basically destroys the entire human race, right? So there are several reasons why some survive, and part of that goes into social distancing, but not to give anything away from the book. There's one that seems especially relevant, and it starts actually in the 1960s, in the happiest place on Earth, which is
Disneyland.
Right, exactly. So people may not know this, but Epcot wasn't first conceived as a theme park, right? Walt Disney originally wanted to create this model community of like 20,000 people, and Epcot actually stands for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Filled with innovations like monorails, people movers, underground car traffic, all that stuff. But it never happened. Now, in my book, someone like Jeff Bezos took up Walt Disney's mantle, right? And he succeeded in creating this amazing prototype community. Imagine a completely self-sufficient, off-the-grid, sealed community filled with the latest like water catchment systems, energy-efficient infrastructure, zero carbon, like hydroponic gardens, waste recycling, all of it protected behind giant concrete walls.
Right.
So imagine you had that kind of a city built, and then you had a deadly pandemic hit, right? So you've got Amazon, or a company like it in my book, already one of the largest distributors on the planet, taking over the world's entire supply chain and using drones to deliver goods to people who, because the virus is so contagious, not only have socially distanced, they've socially isolated themselves from each other, right? So they're living in this sealed city, in apartment, and they're never allowed to go outside. Imagine entire generations have grown up that know nothing about being outside. Right. Let
me ask you a question about that real quick, because I've thought about this as, I have teenagers. You have teenagers. What would that be like if the parents or single parent or whatever it is and kids and you're hanging out in your own place, and what happens when they grow up? How do they socialize? How do they date? How do they get married? I mean, how do they live their lives?
Right. So that was the whole thing about technology developing and growing. Cause and effect, right? So you have this need that needs to be filled, and one of them is like socializing and being able to experience things outside of your apartment or your room or just with your family, right? So in my book, there's a new technology called the Vert, which is like an advanced VR, right?
Right.
People in the book go to work in virtual reality. They go to school. They go for runs in the park. They go on date in the Vert. So it's what balances social isolation with this idea of a virtual society.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already kind of doing this right now, right? We're already in chat rooms and forums, massive multiplayer online games. They're all precursors to a totally online virtual society. So in many ways, all of this technology that we have now is kind of developed into the Vert, which is how you balance this whole idea of being socially isolated with this technology that allows you to be social, even if you're isolated inside your own home.
But in the story that you write, it turns out that unlike if we were to assume that everything we're seeing from Italy is true, then we have plenty of things to worry about. But in the story that you write, many, many, many generations have passed, and it's possible that the world is not as your main character, Zoa, believes.
That's right. I mean, all her life, she's grown up thinking that if you go outside, you die. There's this
Right.
virus, and nobody knows how it propagates. Nobody knows how it works. Nobody knows whether it's still active, right? So they've part of it is that the government and the Ceres Corporation has pushed this agenda on people, saying that you cannot go outside, you cannot socialize, you cannot leave your apartment, or else you're going to die.
Right.
So one of the other characters in the book, Milton, who is this hacker, has infiltrated the global network, which is our version of the internet in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Has kind of uncovered some facts that are kind of disturbing about how things aren't what they seem on the surface. So they hatch a plan, and they actually leave the safety of their homes and go out and try to solve this mystery. And on the way, they kind of discover, hey, maybe things aren't the way they told us. Things aren't the way we thought they were supposed to be out here. Which isn't to say that the virus isn't still active and isn't still around, but things aren't exactly how they thought it was supposed to be.
One of the most exciting things to me in the book when I was reading it, and in all fairness, I read this book early, and I'm involved in the publishing of it. I should disclose that. But one of the things that I thought was like super exciting was just the way the drones worked. Like if you imagine Amazon actually perfecting its delivery drones, and now you just have skyways just filled with large and small drones of multiple sizes just constantly moving back and forth across the continent, such that you have a character actually hitch a ride. Can you describe the highway of drones?
Right. So it's kind of layered like strata. So you have these,
Right.
These skyways of thousands of drones shipping, everything. And some of them are larger. The larger drones are at the bottom, the faster drones at the top, and you kind of see they're zipping along at various different speeds, at various different altitudes. And the drones basically, they take products from warehouses or factories or what have you, and they deliver them to individual homes. And every home is set up with like this hermetically sealed loading dock filled with air belts and UV lights and aerosol sprays to keep things completely virus-free. So you have these drones that connect to people's houses, and they offload whatever it is that the Ceres Corporation decides you need based off of formulas to live. And so you don't get to choose what you get delivered. It's not like you can go online and just decide, hey, I want a pizza tonight.
Really?
Yeah.
Right. So that's similar to what's going on now with Amazon. If you want to order something that's not necessary, it's going to take us a month to deliver because we're busy delivering the stuff that people need. But this is like that times 1,000. That's fascinating. That's really
right.
cool.
So, they control the entire supply chain, right? So they know what's growing and what's being manufactured. They know what the supply levels are. They know what they can deliver, and who deserves to get bananas and who deserves to get apples and who gets chocolate, right? You don't get to choose because, it's the end of the world and there's only so much of things to go around. And so the company decides what you get. The company controls everything, right?
Yeah. Can I ask you something? This book is coming out now, and I know that's exciting, but I know that it must be really disturbing watching the news and watching, we were talking about the closing of South by Southwest before we started recording. I don't remember a time when I felt more unsure exactly what happens next in the way that I do now. Do you?
No, not even after, 9/11. That was an attack, and it really changed how we traveled and how we lived our lives. But this is something completely different. This is like, there's no script for what's happening. I think for a few days there, it just seemed like, okay, they're canceling NBA games. They're canceling hockey. They're canceling everything. And it's just one announcement after the other. It just seemed like, I can't believe this is happening right now. And I could have never predicted, that this is exactly the way events would occur after the coronavirus hit. You can't. For weeks now, we haven't been able to find toilet paper, which is very strange. But I would
It
have
is
never
super strange.
that would be a problem,
Yeah, it is super weird, and that's one of those things that the people have done to themselves because we don't have whatever else we have. We don't have a paper shortage in this country. That's
Right.
not a problem.
Right.
We don't have an alcohol shortage. There's always manufacturing issues, right? Because for decades we've embraced just-in-time manufacturing for stuff,
Right.
but all that is that's just a logistical problem. We don't have a shortage of paper. We can make more paper. We can make more alcohol. So it is really, really weird to me. The thing that it's most like to me is not even the 2008 collapse, but in a way, you mentioned 9/11, but how it's different is as dramatic as how it's the same. Because you remember 9/11 happened and the stock market tanked and people started selling their stocks in even soap, which is crazy because obviously people were going to keep using soap, but people are irrational. And so the stock market was tanking and Hollywood stopped doing deals and book producers stopped doing deals, publishers and people stopped taking meetings. And that was imaginary. That was just fear because
Right.
there was one crime, killed 3,000 people, and then that was it. But I mean, that cratered the world. This one, people are actually afraid of a real virus and they got to stay in. And of course it will be worse because this one actually has a real component to it. Having said that, the same issue is going on where the consumers are going to be every bit as fearful as they were before. I mean, but then again, they're still being, it's not really the consumer's fault that they're being told to stay home or that the pizza place is closing or any of that. And maybe, so I don't know. I really literally don't know what comes next. This is, it is a very, very strange time.
People are irrational,
Yeah.
I think, I know how it is here. I don't know how it is in Colorado, but I know in Texas and here in Washington, we have pretty relaxed gun laws.
Yeah.
One thing I found pretty interesting was that gun sales lately have skyrocketed here.
Sure.
They were typically selling maybe 12 guns a day, and now they're selling upwards of 300 guns a day now. It's just, these are strange times.
It's funny you mentioned that because I remember spending so much time with my grandparents on the farm in Oklahoma when I was a kid, and you came to the farm.
Yep.
And I remember my grandpa always had a .22 rifle, not the exciting AR-15 style, but just like a blender, it was just an ugly .22 rifle, that is a boring tool, just like anything else. It had bullets in it, and it was just propped behind the door. And it wasn't there to shoot people; it was there to shoot snakes and coyotes. But I remember they taught us gun safety and all that stuff. I don't per se have an objection to people having a rifle in the house or whatever. I'm disturbed by the fetishization of guns, but I kind of get the idea of buying a rifle just to have in case. But I mean, think about this. I have
in case someone tries to take your toilet paper, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, think of it. That's what's wild is for it to come to the point where I need that damn rifle. Things are a hell of a lot worse than they are right now.
Right, we're not there. We're not there yet.
You really have to be to the point where fire and police have broken down, and there are robbers making their way up and down the streets trying to break into houses. I'm not saying that's impossible, but that's a level of lawlessness that is hard to envision. Not impossible. So I mean, I don't know the answer. Is it responsible to have a rifle? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't. Because think about it, the police would have to be gone. The fire department would have to be gone. That's yeah. How the hell much ammunition do you have to buy if you think it's for the rest of your life? I don't even know the answer to that.
How much toilet paper do you need to buy?
How much toilet paper? Yes. Yeah.
The next level, I think, of weirdness is going to be, because I've gotten lots of phone calls and emails from families saying, don't leave your house unless you're wearing gloves and a mask. And I think if we get to that point to where when we go outside, everyone has to wear a mask and gloves, then I think we're at the next level,
Yeah.
Then things have changed permanently, right? And I think in China and Asia, a lot of people wear masks anyway. Part of it is pollution, part of it is culturally, they don't want to spread germs. They don't want to
spread germs. Right. Yeah.
Here it's just this weird thing that nobody wants to do, and people look at you strange if you're wearing one. But at some point, there's going to be a tipping point to where people are going to start to be scared, and everyone's going to start wearing masks and gloves. And I think that's going to be the next level of weirdness we get to.
If they do, it'll go from weird to normal pretty quickly because, I mean, as you've observed, we get used to stuff really fast. I remember people didn't used to ride their bike or ski with a helmet. And now when I go skiing, everybody wears a helmet. When I go biking, everybody wears a helmet. And so once upon a time, that helmet looked really stupid, and now it just looks like a helmet.
Right.
And,
I mean, we didn't even wear seatbelts when we were kids, right? When we were
right. Exactly.
It feels weird not to have a seatbelt on. So,
right.
Yeah.
It sure does. Yeah. So, I mean, it's possible that we could, that even after the virus has moved through, even after we have our means of mitigating it, and the pizza parlors are open back up and you can go see your concerts again, I think we may see a world where it's very common to go out and wear a pair of gloves and a mask. It's possible. Yeah. I mean,
what self-respecting post-apocalyptic movie have you seen that doesn't have their main characters wearing masks and goggles, all sorts of accoutrements when they go outside?
Well, Mad Max
is at the end of the world, right? You have to wear protection. So
yeah. No, it's absolutely right. Yeah. Humongous. Lord Humongous wears that big ass metal bandana, which I recommend. So seriously, they are recommending, authorities are recommending that if you can't get a mask and you actually have to do some dangerous work where you're going to maybe in a very good chance of an infection, they're saying wear a bandana. So I know attorneys are going into lockup and they don't have N95 masks, and so they're wearing bandanas like they're going to rob a freaking bank. And
well, they are attorneys. I mean,
yeah. Yes, love it.
Granted, they're criminal attorneys, but still.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to offend.
No. I think listen, I went to law school, so we love lawyer jokes. Actually, honestly, that's just that's like fuel for us.
In the book, The Pandemic Has Happened Generations Ago, and this is kind of the fallout and how society has survived and moved on since the pandemic. Isonation really is more an action-adventure novel. It's not really more about zombies and viruses and that kind of dark, bleak. It's more positive and hopeful, and it's full of action pieces. It's got prison breaks and arcade-style virtual reality fighting. There's this grand conspiracy that all the characters have to unravel. There's this huge mystery that has to be solved. While the idea of a post-apocalyptic virus wiping mankind off the planet may seem dark, Isonation is more about pursuing truth, right? It's about characters taking on risk to do what's right. And it's about what the brightest and best do with dealing with the end of the world.
So the book is Isonation. It comes out from Castlebridge Media. It comes out on April 1st, which is like 6 or 7 days away. I'm super excited to see how it goes. I think that it has this really intriguing vision for the future. Andrew, thank you very much for discussing it. I really can't wait to hear what people think. April 1, Isonation comes out. Good luck. I hope you have a wonderful release.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
And thank you for having me.